Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Biollywood podcast, where we explore biological threats in pop culture and what they teach us about real-world biodefense. I'm JT O'Brien, Associate Director of Research with the Bipartisan Commission on Biodefense at the Atlantic Council, which is part of the Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. I'm joined by our director, Dr. Asha M. George.
Hello.
And our Associate Director for Government Relations and Policy, Rob Bradley.
Hello there.
Today, we are discussing the 2026 science fiction film Project Hail Mary, which was directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller and written by Drew Goddard, who also wrote The Martian. It is based on the 2021 novel by Andy Weir and was released on March 20th, 2026 by Amazon MGM Studios. It stars Ryan Gosling as Dr. Ryland Grace. And this is a special episode because the Commission previously did a Biollywood podcast episode on the novel itself for Project Hail Mary. So today we're revisiting the story through the lens of film adaptation and examining what changed from page to screen, how the science held up under Hollywood's treatment, and what new biodefense considerations and conversations the film opens up for a mass audience. So to get into a little bit of the premise for this film, a middle school science teacher, Ryland Grace, who's played by Ryan Gosling, wakes up on a spaceship light years away from home with no recollection of who he is or how he got there. And as his memory returns, he begins to uncover his mission, which is to solve the riddle of a mysterious substance called Astrophage that is causing the sun to die out. So he must call on his scientific knowledge and unorthodox ideas to save Earth from extinction. And along the way, he meets a friendly alien engineer named Rocky, who helps him to solve this issue. So, spoiler alert, this discussion will contain full spoilers for the film and the novel. So if you have not seen the film, we highly recommend you do so beforehand. If you haven't seen the book, we also highly recommend that you read it or listen to it. And yeah, let's get on with the podcast. One of the things I think is really cool about this is it brings in this astrobiodefense angle. It talks about gain-of-function research, and I know we talked a little bit about this stuff when we talked about the novel, but I think what's really cool is how successful this film has been and putting these issues in front of the American public and in front of the world, frankly. It's made over $500 million at the box office, which is pretty amazing for a hard science kind of film. So I think it really shows the interest of the public in these sorts of issues. And I think the movie did an excellent job just out of the gate in being able to translate those issues to a normal audience. So opening up with that, I'm curious for how you guys thought of the film, especially. I know, Rob, you didn't read the novel. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious for your thoughts on the film, just purely just based on the film. And then Asha, having seen both the film and read the book, I'm curious for your thoughts next as well. Just initial impressions.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I'm coming in at this even more from a kind of neutral perspective, because I didn't even see or read the previous work done by Andy Weir that was adapted into film. I have not read or seen The Martian, so this was my first experience of an Andy Weir story in any way, shape, or form. Something that my wife is flabbergasted by because she has consumed everything that she can at this point that he has written. But, I think for me, and, I'm largely informed by the work that we do here in the Commission, I thought it was a very enjoyable film. I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it's very thought-provoking in terms of the questions that it raises, the implications for astrobiodefense, as well as, what sort of drastic measures any sort of government, let alone a unified world government effort, would take to try to solve an Earth or world-ending danger. I thought that the blending of the hard science with the storytelling was very well executed in the film. I didn't think it was bogged down by any means. I can only assume that it owes the lightness of the light touch of the science elements to the source material, because I've heard that the source material as well does not get too bogged down in those sorts of things. What I did think was interesting is that you have this interesting blend of hard science. This is clearly informed by the author's own, background, with more fantastical elements in this film in particular. Right. I think when people talk about The Martian, and again, I haven't seen it, there's kind of a discussion of, this could happen. There are some pieces of this film where they just almost hand wave away challenges that we know are almost more difficult than figuring out the core problem. Like near light speed travel, for instance, being the big one.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. That I was thinking I would like to see how they tackle that challenge, but we just kind of said no, we're going to skip right to sending you to Toss Eddie. But all in all, I thought it was a good film, and I do recommend it from the perspective of people being able to come out of this saying, okay, these are some interesting ideas that we need to keep having conversations about, because there's no easy solutions to a lot of what was proposed here,
right?
Including the core challenge that was presented. But it's something that I think we do need to talk about as we move forward with our work, but also just as a society. As we have these technological innovations. The one thing that struck me, though, was the almost complete lack of AI in any of this conversation or story, which probably made sense when the novel was originally written. But in 2026, I would have forgiven the filmmakers for wanting to try to incorporate what is clear by that point during filming, had been a rapidly developing technology, to see how that might have impacted the story a little bit.
Right.
But other than that, was I think the rest of it seemed to make sense.
I do think the AI piece is an interesting piece that you brought up, because Mary, the onboard AI, from what I can remember, was not a character themselves in the novel. And I think they did that partially just to give him someone else to talk to early on before Rocky got involved. But I thought that was an interesting point.
No, but remember, JT, when he first wakes up. The medical robot does talk to him. Yeah,
it does talk to him. I feel like it wasn't as much as it was in the film, though. There wasn't as much back and forth. I don't think that it was as much of a character. I think
there was back and forth with the robot.
Yes.
I don't think there was back and forth with the ship. I agree with you. I don't remember the ship itself being quite so verbose.
Yeah, the onboard AI. But I think in the book it was described almost as a unintelligent artificial intelligence. Like it was just limited very to basic skills. It was constrained. And I think we're seeing now with AI how difficult that is to actually do in practice.
But I think it's interesting that they made the choice for this movie. I agree with you, Rob. I think they could have put more in there.
Yeah.
When you think about, what's the movie with Matthew McConaughey?
Interstellar. Yeah.
Right. Remember, it's not not so much the onboard computers, but the TARS, the two of them. They're dialing in and dialing up humor and all of that. Well, we have those now.
Yeah, and that's how it
there are
works.
apps now that you can download. Just you can talk to, and you can do the same thing. So interesting. How, and I don't know that we're going to find out how those decisions were made, but somebody decided for Interstellar it should be this way.
Right.
And somebody decided for this movie that it should not. Maybe they were just trying to really retain fidelity to the original novel.
Yeah.
But I don't know why, because I don't think either Andy Weir or Drew Goddard would have said, no, this is what I thought at the time, and this is what Andy thought, and we're just going to leave it like that. I can't imagine that. Right.
Yeah. I can't imagine that either, because especially with what you were saying, Rob, they figured out almost near light speed travel, or some percentage of
off
light
screen.
Speed off screen.
Well, I do have a theory though.
Yeah.
Maybe they did it on purpose because they didn't want Grace to develop too much of a relationship, quote unquote, with the ship, and instead wanted to focus everything on his developing this relationship with this alien.
Yeah, I think that.
Maybe that's why.
I think that's part of it.
And maybe there was an AI-esque kind of aspect of that in the translation of his speech or his sounds into speech for Grace. So maybe that was the reason. Maybe it's a director's
very possibly
decision.
I have a theory about why you wouldn't want to lean too heavily into AI as a thing in the time frame of this film, but the script could have added some AI elements without going too far that way.
Yeah.
If they'd wanted to, they could have shown the development on Earth or progression on Earth as a result of AI. It could have shown his use of AI on Earth. to conduct some of the experiments that he was conducting before he went to the carrier, if they had wanted to.
Yeah.
But maybe they decided, it was clear that they decided to strip some things away to make it a more, evenly paced film, I think is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
I think you yourself have mentioned that the scene with the Taumiba issues at the end of the original story, there's a more protracted scene where he's having to decon the ship. They kind of glaze over that almost a little bit because they didn't want to lose. I think they didn't want to lose the pacing of the film.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think similar to the AI stuff, because one thing I do remember from the novel is he did have a lot more trouble getting out of the bed and getting up that ladder. It took him quite a few tries. It wasn't the first try like you saw in the film, and part of the reason for that was because the AI was dragging him back into the med bay because it thought that he needed to be there, and it was making these errors, kind of like what we see in modern day AI. So in the book that was there, which was pretty interesting for the time. But to your point, I think for pacing reasons, they might have eliminated some of that, and they didn't want this to necessarily be a story about AI.
Yeah.
I think one thing I found when I was doing some research on this, the initial runtime was 3 hours and 45 minutes. Because I think I mentioned to you, Asha, while I think it hit every beat, it did feel a little rushed in some parts, like the Taumiba decon. Like that was a huge issue when I got to it in the book. I was like,
they had to get rid of this.
Yeah.
Are they going to have a director's cut?
I hope so.
Know?
I really hope so.
That would be interesting.
Because I think there was more that they could have filled in there.
Yeah. Yeah, but we have this argument about The Lord of the Rings, too. I mean, if they put everything in there, plus the additional appendices that were in the original books, it would be 12 million hours long, and maybe they don't want to do that.
And I think a movie serves the story better than a television series would have.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So I think they made the right call.
I think maybe you could have gotten a limited series out of this if you'd wanted to.
Yeah.
You could have spent like an episode on Earth. You could have spent like an episode with him waking up and getting used to being in space. But like 5 or 6 episodes at most.
Yeah.
I think is what we would have been looking at there. Otherwise, you risk drawing it out too much. I agree.
Yeah.
It is fascinating you mentioned Lord of the Rings, Asha, because there's been a long time ridicule to a certain extent of, to be clear, I am a Lord of the Rings fan, but a long time jokes about, well, why didn't they just ride the eagles all the way to Mordor, right? As opposed to trudging through the... I had a similar sort of thought about this film, and it pertains to AI. They send a man at near light speed to a completely different solar system, but there's no discussion at all in the movie, and I presume the book, about leveraging CRISPR and AI as a way to find a solution to the astrophage here on Earth, whether as the primary solution or as a backup solution should Project Hail Mary fail. There's no discussion that I can tell. And it really bothered me that there was, we have the ability, we're talking about mirror biology. We're talking about creating completely new, biological matter that doesn't currently exist in our nature. And we decided, after uniting the entire world's best scientific minds together, that our only salvation lay light years away in another solar system. It just doesn't feel right.
Well, I think that's typical. Let's go to the source, or let's go figure out something about the anomaly. But I guess JT, the question is, could we have used CRISPR
and not sent people?
Well, never mind the sending of people. Could we have used CRISPR on any of this? I mean, we did get the astrophage. We got it all the way to Earth.
I think the problem with using CRISPR is a function that comes from bacteria. So you have to use the bacteria to use the CRISPR function to then edit the DNA or RNA. And that works with a lot of things, but I'm sure that there are some where it doesn't, or some sequences where it might not work. So we might not have known that it would have worked on this, and I'm sure Grace tried it. Like in the book there, and this is something else that cut kind of short, was his experiments on figuring out how to kill it, how to alter it, how to there was a lot more that he did in the novel to try and figure out the characteristics of this thing. So I think he probably would have tried CRISPR. It wasn't mentioned in the book that he did, but I think it comes down to it being a completely foreign entity. And that's why they said, and they eventually got to the point where it's like, the only way we can do this is to go and figure out why this star is the only one not infected. And then the answer turns out to be a natural predator that can actually kill this thing and control it. And you would need to have that information to use CRISPR effectively to
The information or the actual amoeba?
you would want the amoeba ideally. You would want the amoeba.
But you couldn't theorize that there might be a natural predator out there for the phage and then reverse engineer it?
Not unless you knew what the phage was.
Okay.
You couldn't, because it would be kind of like
unless you knew what the phage was, or unless you knew what the tau amoeba was?
The tau amoeba was.
Okay.
Yeah, because they knew what the phage was, but unless you knew what the tau amoeba was, it seemed like they were running this thing was completely impervious to UV. It could literally sit on the sun. So I think the CRISPR angle would not have. It's such a robust organism. I think that they needed more information than just using CRISPR to try and alter it.
Does he have communications? Not obviously interactive communications. We know that, but was he? When he does a lot of filming,
right?
Was he sending stuff back, or was he saving it to all go back with the Beatles?
I think he was saving it to all go back with the Beatles.
Okay, so that I have a problem with, because I think that as you're discovering things, at least try and send some information back.
Yeah.
But how you accomplish that without the Beatles or without more Beatles is, maybe just a bridge too far, because you can't just send a. I guess you could send a signal, but it would take forever to get back.
Yeah, it would take forever to get back, and I don't know if I think a radio signal would have degraded over that time. Like our radio signals that come out of Earth, they degrade by the time they get to like the Oort cloud within the solar system. They're indistinguishable. You can't really read them, so you'd have to use a higher bandwidth signal. And there might be something that you could use.
I just think that I think that it would have been more realistic to have more, not necessarily Beatles, but more ways to get something back, because we're not ever going to know what happens to him. So he might get to a place and figure something out, and then something might happen. And so I would want him to be able to send packets of his thinking, his observations, whatever, back, so that if something happens to him and he dies before he can solve everything, then Earth has something to work with. So that's one thing I think. I think the other thing too is we only see this story from his perspective, what's going on with him, the decisions about him. Yeah. We see a little bit of like, oh, there's an experiment going on over there, or they screw it up, or somebody screws something up and there's an explosion and what. But for the most part, all we see is his involvement in all of this. The United Nations kind of doing its thing and sort of forcing something. And then we don't see anything else. So I think, Rob, number one, it's possible that some other country, while participating in this, may also have said, we're going to keep doing our thing, because why do we trust that this is all going to work out? Number one. And then number two, I also think that it's possible that even as part of the United Nations aspect of this, or decisions, that, okay, they send him off and they're like, okay, great, off you go. Now we're just not all going to sit here and twiddle our thumbs. What can we do? Maybe we can use CRISPR. Maybe we can continue with our own research. Maybe we can figure out. Now, I will say that they would have to split their resources, because the planet is getting colder and colder. We have to figure out how we're going to deal with that, and see if we can keep people warm enough to survive stuff. And are we going to start sending people closer, to planets closer to the sun? It's a little warmer over there. Right. So there might have been other problems. But my feeling about that, what you're saying is, we're seeing this slice
and what's happening.
And we have to, because this is a movie and we can't look at everything and watch everything. So it's possible. I'm granting the possibility that people continued.
Yeah.
In one way or another.
I think you're absolutely right. Sorry, I just want to say, I definitely got the sense of almost claustrophobia to a certain extent with the perspective of the film, especially for the segments that are on Earth. There's so much information you are not given about what is going on.
Yep.
To the point where, as Grace is doing his experiments on the astrophage, I was thinking, well, obviously they must have dozens of scientists doing similar experiments, and yet there's not really too much discussion that I can see, outside of maybe some kind of knowing nods during the meeting on the aircraft carrier when he first arrives, that they have found made similar or other discoveries on top of those that he made.
Well, there is mention of clearance, though.
There is mention of
So
clearance, yeah.
it's hard to say how much was being shared, even amongst the United Nations group, right? The composite group. And then knowing us, I would say we would, no matter what, there's a whole group of people who are going to be like, we're withholding. Sorry. You don't get everything, because we might have to save the United States, or we might have to save Americans, and too bad for everybody else. But so it's possible. Also, things seem to be moving so fast.
Yeah.
They, you know,
Mm-hmm.
somebody says he doesn't have clearance. What's her face?
I grant you a clearance.
Immediately grants him
Which, by the way, I
clearance.
had a question about that. Is that something the U.S. government is able to do, to have the president just tell this person you were able to grant clearance to
Well, not the
anybody?
president. But yes, you can. It's called. You can do an emergency clearance, but you are supposed to fill out some paperwork, and there has to be need. Of course, there is a need in this case, but at the same time, I can imagine that that could have even been done tongue in cheek, because what are we even talking about? We should not be talking about clearances
at that point.
And he was there by then. I could see if he's somewhere else and they're zooming in. I mean, but they had brought him all the way into the inner sanctum. No. There's no reason for anybody to be talking about clearance.
Even more reason for them to have filed the paperwork out, and maybe that's why it's tongue in cheek. Maybe they filed the paperwork while he was en route to the carrier, because they were seeing all of his experiments in real time.
Correct.
So
and
they knew
she
that they
knew
were
everything about him.
They knew
right?
they were,
and
they
clearance
knew they were
paperwork is where did you work, and who
they already
knows
have
you,
all of that.
and where have you lived, what's going on with your family. It's not that much more than that.
Yeah.
Then it's up to an investigator. So again, maybe in the background, somebody is doing that investigation.
Yeah.
And I can tell you from when I served on the Biden-Harris transition team, it was easier for those of us that had been cleared before, but the intelligence community and the law enforcement community swung into action. There was no waiting for 6 months for a clearance to come through. It came in really, really fast. So even if you say, well, it's a little unrealistic to grant an emergency clearance all of a sudden, it's not unrealistic to say every country turns around and tells their intelligence apparatus, do this really, really fast.
Yeah.
You know, it was just kind of funny, though, that she stands up and does it. But that was part of of the movie, I guess, to make it funny.
It's meant to be a moment in the movie. It makes perfect sense. It just, I was like, could she really do that? But now it makes sense after you explain it.
Yeah, but to your earlier point about them, not kind of talking about what was happening back home on Earth, the book does give a lot more clarity and direction. I think that was missed from the book a little bit. So they talk about, Eva Strauss is basically the de facto world leader, including Russia, China. Everyone's working together. So they explain that whole political environment, how that kind of came to be, given all of this. And then they do have other scientists working on it. And so it's not just Grace and his lab. There are other people in the other labs. It's just that Grace happened to get lucky enough to figure out how to poke it with a stick and kill it, which I'm really disappointed they missed that line from the book, because that was a really funny line. Because Eva said, so you spent all this time and resources and all you figured out how to do was poke it with a stick and kill it. So there were a lot of other scientists working on it and stuff. And the reason that he went on the mission was so that the scientists back home could continue working, because they're smarter than him.
Oh, interesting.
That's why he went, or he was one of the people. So there's, I think in the movie, he kind of like maybe tongue in cheek said, "Oh, am I the guinea pig?" And she's like, "Yeah." He was the guinea pig. So another thing that kind of was missed from the book, and also I think this kind of relates to Strauss's character as well, and I'd be interested for your perspective on it, Asha. She was very softened from the way she was portrayed in the book. She was portrayed as like hard and authoritarian, and like almost like no nonsense kind of like that was a big shift from the book that I noticed. They made her a lot more.
I don't think that they softened her as much as you think she did, or
they
at
did.
least my perspective on that.
And I think part of it may be because she wasn't included as much as I thought she was going to be in terms of the book. But
I thought my issue was not so much that as much as it was that her leadership position was not as obvious in the
defined.
movie.
Right.
You know, in the book, it's like everybody decides she's got ultimate power. No one else matters.
Right.
She's got commands of every resource and anything she could possibly need. And that's that. And she acted like it.
Right.
In this, it's kind of there, mostly there, but
Rob,
not
were
that
you sure
much.
of her position watching the film? Like what her role was?
Not in terms of absolute power. That was not fully conveyed. And by the way, I have some questions about how absolute are we talking here? You know, like, does that mean that she could tell the U.S. military you need to, discharge all of your standing military, all your standing soldiers and airmen and seamen because we need all that money to go invest in this over here?
Yes.
That's insane.
That's why Ryland got on an F-15 or F-16 because they were like, we need you here now.
Yeah.
You're getting in this thing.
Well, I mean, that's fine if you're going to use temporarily use assets to move people. But if you're going to say we're going to basically dismantle all of your standing militaries because we need all those resources to put into this research, that is
that's
amazing.
How the book comes across.
An astounding amount of selflessness on the part of every nation involved.
Yeah.
And I don't think we'd ever actually see it in real life.
No, I think this is an optimistic view of international cooperation that is not seen in other things like the three-body problem or things like that.
And frankly, it shouldn't happen in real life. And what I mean by that is no nation is keeping its citizens' best interests at heart if it is vesting all authority, including national defense, into a singular individual who lacks the experience and understanding and perhaps the interest of that nation on not a, obviously there's a big macro level, but on a global level, because if she succeeds, well, then there is a tomorrow. And then you've done all these things to ensure there's a tomorrow, but then what state are you going to be left in afterwards?
Yeah, but in fairness, she does not dismantle every military in the world.
No, but she could, and nobody would be able to stop her.
She's like a benevolent dictator, kind of.
Yeah.
In real life, there would, at a bare minimum, be some sort of advisory or oversight council, reviewing the activities and having some sort of veto power over what was going on here.
Yeah, but I think in the book they make it, they say we can't have that. We cannot have vetoes and advisory and regulatory and none of that can happen because we have to move so quickly and we're all at so much risk. Whether that's realistic or not, I agree with you, probably not the most realistic thing, although I would say that probably every nation might say, sure, we're going to do it, and then maybe they don't do it when she decides that something has to happen.
And that's even more reason why no nation would actually fully commit, because they know that the other at any moment China or Russia or anyone else could back out if they wanted to, and then you'd be left holding the bag to a certain extent.
Well, I don't know what her not so much her authority, but like where's the punishment? Like if somebody does not do what she says needs to be done, where's the accountability arm? Because it's the United Nations, and the United Nations in and of itself doesn't have any power. So what? Yeah.
What's the
where
enforcement?
Is it? Right. Yeah.
And I think
but those issues did not come up in the book. So
thankfully,
they did come up in the book. But I think it's an interesting point you bring up because like the Three Body Problem series has a very similar situation where they put people in charge, like they try to do this, basically what happens in this, and they figure out, and then the they have four people.
The wall facers
have four, but they have the UN like Security Council who can veto their decisions, and if they screw up and it does happen, one of them gets charged with like the extinction of humanity law because one of the things they try to do is just so insane. And then they don't have this kind of socialized technology thing because several countries are like, I'm not sharing my technology with the U.S. is like, I don't want to share it with the Chinese and the Russians. Planetary defense is our number one priority, but so is national security.
Yeah.
So there was not that working together that you see in this film. And that ends up, kind of being the end of the human race. Spoiler alert in that series.
Well, I think a more realistic
not the human race.
Depiction occurs in The Martian. It's something you haven't seen, Rob, but I won't tell you. I guess we don't want to spoil it for Rob, but countries are watching what's happening with Matt Damon's character. And it's fair to tell you he's been left behind on Mars by a U.S. mission or a U.S.-led mission. But countries are withholding things And there are questions about are we going to help? Are we not going to help? What should we, why don't they know about it? Oh, because it's classified. I thought that part of The Martian was really quite realistic. So, there may have been a decision to not do some of the things that they might have done, but because they've appeared in The Martian.
Yeah.
Even Andy himself maybe wrote this somewhat differently because he did not want it to be a repeat of the exact same approach that is used in The Martian. He wanted, now in both cases there is this international component.
Right.
So, he clearly he wants to make that point that we should all work together somehow.
Right.
But maybe not in the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I respect that he wants, if the explanation is that Weir wanted to try a different way to portray this sort of, global unified effort to address something that's out in the stars. I respect that. I think what would have been interesting, though, was to have seen what else they were doing after Grace left Earth.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to invest this amount of power into a single individual, is there a sequel coming?
I don't know.
But if you're going to invest this kind of power into somebody, and they use it for do we know how much time passes between when she first brings Grace on board and when the Hail Mary launches?
Not off the top of my head. I don't think they.
It's not very long.
I mean, in the book, they might, but definitely not in the movie.
Okay, so let's say it's like a year or two at most, or
max.
Yeah,
I think I was
because they
going to
only
say a
have
couple
20
of
or
months.
30 years before everything.
But it's pretty evident, at least in the film, that by the time the Talmiba makes its way to Earth, she's still in charge in some capacity.
Yeah, and the world has frozen over. It seems.
And at least it appears that there is at least some freezing effect from the dimming. So it makes you wonder, what has she been doing with all that power over the course of however many decades have transpired on Earth?
Well, it might have been a time-limited, powerful situation, though.
That's a question.
Yeah, that's also possible as well.
Yeah, and maybe that would have made it more amenable for the nations involved to say, sure, we'll give you 5 years. Mm-hmm. You could do whatever you want.
Mission.
Yeah, for this mission.
You get this mission.
Yeah.
Once the rocket goes into space, you're done.
Right.
We'll go back to trying to figure out a solution.
Mm-hmm. Because we see her in a station somewhere at the end of this movie.
She's on a boat, isn't she?
Yeah, she's on an icebreaker ship.
Yeah.
So she's doing something.
I mean, I assumed that she was still in her position of authority, but it's a good point. Decades have passed. Maybe something has changed.
Well, she might be on the icebreaker because that's where the Beatles were coming back to.
That's a possibility too.
Yeah, they may have fished out of the water.
Or the icebreaker could be where ordinarily we're landing people now in much warmer waters, but it's not warm anymore.
Right. Yeah.
In which case it would just be normal. Yeah. That's where they come down.
Right. So any number of possibilities. But it would have. I guess the point is that this was such an interesting scenario that I would have loved to have seen what Earth was doing while he was in space.
Right. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there's just so many questions about. There's really fascinating questions about what Earth could do over the course of 20 years to address something so drastic as the sun dimming while Project Hail Mary is happening.
Right.
Because think about it, technology would continue to advance on Earth.
Right.
AI would get smarter. Our ability to manipulate biological material would improve. What could we have theoretically done? Even rocket propulsion.
Exactly. Yeah.
If we already achieved the ability to go near light speed, imagine what else we could have done to get closer to Venus and the sun.
Right. Exactly. It could have been, and this. Comes up in a lot of other science fiction things where you send someone out, in the year 2021, and then 5 years or 10 years later, you get this amazing advancement in rocket propulsion, and they go and they just zip right past the it's kind of like the Voyager type stuff, because they they did the gravity assists, and so that's a total possibility. So I would really like to see what's going on back home. Hopefully that could be the focus of the sequel.
You've seen other sci-fi universes kind of take a similar sort of approach. This has nothing to do with Bio, but Ender's Game. They had the original book was focused very much on the story of Ender, and then they had a kind of a follow-up, almost side series that was focused on the other classmates of his after he went out into the far reaches of space to see what happened to Earth. That's kind of what I want to see here. I want to see a follow-up novel that's exclusively focused here on Earth and what happens here.
Yeah, I would like to see that too, and I'd also like to see a little bit more of what's happening on Arid as well, or get a little bit more from that perspective. I think it would be interesting to see what they were doing and I mean, that might be expensive for all the puppeteers, but
Which reminds me, in the previous episode that you both did on this, I appreciate how you guys were both trying to, you in particular were trying to be like,
Yeah.
oh, do we want to talk about the third main cast member, the third main character here, because you were worried about spoiling everything. And then all the marketing for this film just immediately brings this puppet to the fore.
Because it was such a surprise to me when I was reading the book. It was something I was not ready for. I was just like, all right, lone guy on a mission. I was not expecting him to meet an alien in that book. It was not even in my mind. So it was such a cool reveal to me. I'm disappointed that they gave it away in the trailers, but I get it. I mean,
maybe they just decided they weren't going to be able to keep it quiet.
Probably.
I think that they probably couldn't keep it quiet, and I think they might have seen like a Baby Yoda opportunity.
Oh, definitely.
Maybe
definitely.
Like
From
with merch and marketing. So
1,000%. Because I'm sure the folks that cut the trailer were thinking, well, how do we distinguish this from every other sort of space film with dire consequences for Earth, like Interstellar? Well, here we got a rock alien. Let's throw that into the mix. I mean, obviously it goes without saying, Grace got lucky that he ran into a benevolent alien.
A benevolent engineer.
Yeah. While he was out in Tau Ceti, who happened to have the exact same problem that they were trying to solve. But it does make you wonder how Grace would have fared had he not run into him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how he could have pulled off the maneuver to get the Tau Amoeba without Rocky. I mean, Rocky, that chain, and in the book, that chain is extremely important. They talk about like the difficulty of making it, and that's not something he could have done. And even with the chain, they still almost crashed the entire ship into the planet.
Look, we see repeated themes now, right? Whether we're working together with other countries or we're working together with other planets or aliens and stuff, Andy is hitting this point over and over and over
Cooperation.
again.
Yeah.
It's the only way to win.
Yeah, it's the only way to
survive.
Win. Yeah. I'm jumping around a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
But the Tau Amoeba.
Yeah.
Is it possible to engage in gain of function to make it resistant to nitrogen?
Yeah, I mean it's a very crude way of doing it, the way he did it, which is basically you're just introducing small amounts of nitrogen, seeing which Tau Amoeba survive, taking those, putting them in a new stock or new chamber, introducing a little bit more nitrogen, and you just kind of do that over and over again until you have a stock that can survive in the nitrogen of the atmosphere that you're looking to put it in.
How long
it's
would
crude,
that
but
take?
we do it all the time.
I mean, it would depend on the mutation rate and the reproduction rate of the Tau Amoeba, but I mean, he could probably do it within a few months, maybe if that's all he was doing. I would imagine, and if everything went well.
It depends on how fast they grow.
That's really what it depends on, is how fast they grow.
They grow zillions in a second, and then it's not going to take that long.
If they have like a super slow mutation rate and it takes, you only get one Tau Amoeba out of 100 that actually had the mutation, then it's a little bit more difficult to. But the way that they described it, I think, in the film, and they did give more context in the book, obviously, but it is kind of an accurate way of being able to do that. It sounds crude, it sounds simple, but it is possible. That's basically what we've done with dogs for generations. And that they obviously have a longer life, reproductive cycle and lifespan, so it takes a little bit longer for them. But we've been doing it for a while, and now it's just gotten easier and quicker to do.
Yeah.
So he didn't use synthetic biology to do it, which I thought was pretty neat, because I don't know if they would have been able to get the certain right types of tools up into space to do that. So him kind of taking this simple approach, I think, was really, really cool.
I mean, I would imagine that they probably would have given him those tools if they could have, because they had no way of knowing what he was going to encounter when he got to Tau Ceti. So they'd want to make sure he was equipped with everything they could, right?
You would think, but, and they didn't touch on this in the movie, but that like the weight matters for the speed that you're traveling. Some of that equipment is really, really heavy. I think that that's why there were only 3 people on board. That's why there was no return mission, and that's why they had the Beatles. And I'm sure the Beatles would have gotten back. Part of the plan is the Beatles would have gotten back way faster than that ship would have, gotten back. So I think part of it was we have limited time, so you might have to use more crude experiments. And we kind of have talked about this with the sense of like planetary protection. You can't build a lab out on Mars that has the same capabilities as the ones that we have here at home. And you can't send what we have home up to Mars, because that would cost $250 billion of fuel to do.
It's because it's heavy. An electron microscope takes up this whole room and would be just so heavy.
Yeah.
At least we can't do it right away.
Right. So maybe and even if you are going at a percentage of the light speed, the weight still does matter. I mean, that could be the difference between you going, 20% light speed or 1% light speed is the weight. So I know they didn't touch on it in the movie, and I don't remember if they touched on it as much in the book, but I think that could be the reasoning why, they potentially went that route with and it's also more easily understandable to a wider audience.
Yeah.
If he went in there and was like suturing together, like doing some like weird synthetic biology stuff, I don't think the audience would have been able to understand it as easily.
Well, just again, it points to how lucky the mission was.
Oh,
right?
yeah, super lucky. Super lucky.
That he didn't need those tools.
It is Hail Mary.
Hail Mary.
Yeah.
And so I think
fair.
It's fair. And I think like a really cool part of this, and the reason why it has resonated with a lot of average viewers, is that Ryland is a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big part of this, is that he's able to communicate these ideas and better than any of the other scientists are. And that's a really important, that translational science piece we talk about all the time. That's super, super important. And when you're talking about something this dangerous or this, consequential, having someone like that is really important. That was, a microbiologist, was a teacher to young children. Like, it's a good skill. He had a really good skill set when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I thought that was a really cool piece. And then also I liked how they included the ending with him teaching the young Iridians from the book.
Was that in the book as well?
It was in the book.
Okay,
yes.
good.
I think
good.
Like verbatim.
Excellent.
The quotes and everything were identical.
So do we think that the astrophage could someday develop a resistance or immunity to the tau amoeba?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's something that and that's an unresolved plot point that I think that could be ripe for a sequel. Because we don't, the predator and prey interactions, they go back and forth. So, and we know the astrophage, how resilient it is. We don't know how fast it mutates, but it could potentially be like in that Petrova, or not in the Petrova line, but on Tau Ceti, it kept it in check. But who knows if it will keep it in check over here? There might be other factors or something that, weren't accounted for. Ryland Grace only talked about the nitrogen piece, but are there other factors? Are there other things that, that might potentially allow the astrophage to evolve and overcome the tau amoeba and then, back to square one again.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a really interesting piece. And then what happened, both the tau amoeba and the astrophage are pretty nasty stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The tau, like a little bit of the astrophage can blow up a building, and the tau amoeba can eat through the hull of a ship. These are dangerous microorganisms, both of them are. So I think it speaks a lot to sample return, planetary protection, and I think there's a lot that needs to be unpacked, like in a sequel that they didn't cover in the book or the film.
I can only imagine the battery of tests they conduct on the tau amoeba when they recover it. To kind of figure out, to characterize it, figure out what they should expect if they were to just, I can't imagine they just load in a rocket and shoot into Venus.
Yeah,
they'd probably do it a little bit before they did that.
Yeah. Because they're also going to have to grow it and figure out how to grow it and not to make the same mistakes he did and Rocky did. And by the way, they had a different phase of xenon that they were using that. I don't know if they even sent that. Did they send that information? How to make that stuff?
I don't think he did.
The xenonite?
I don't recall that being mentioned.
Yeah, I don't recall that being mentioned even in the book. So if that's the only thing that can hold it, now they have on Earth, you have to figure out how to make xenonite. And I don't know.
Well, that would be. I think he could have sent the structure back.
He probably could have sent the structure back.
Well, at least that.
I think wasn't the issue that the tau amoeba learned how to eat through those containers.
You're right.
So he sent it back as something different.
Exactly.
So I don't think they need to learn how to reconstruct the xenonite. He probably should have sent a note saying, "Don't put this in xenonite."
Yeah, don't put this in xenonite. But also that speaks to how quickly it can mutate. And when you're doing gain of function research, if you're not considering every variable, you might get some knock-off or knock-on effects that you weren't expecting, like that. So yeah, he was only focused on the nitrogen.
Well, it speaks to policy too, right? We have too many policies where people think that problems are solved and organisms continue on mutating and things happen, and the solution you thought you had in the past is no longer, valid, or the thing you decide you don't need anymore. We talk about this with smallpox all the time. We think we've eradicated smallpox in the world. We do still have it in a couple places, but in terms of repositories. But we have all these other pox, and we have discontinued vaccinating people against smallpox. Is or is that not a good idea? We don't do that for a lot of other things. Of course, we haven't eradicated everything either.
Right.
But it's just, I think it's just a very good point. Life goes on, and we have to stay on top of it. They're going to have to monitor all of this, and stay. That's it. There's no going back. They're not going to solve the problem. Be done with it, and that's the end of it. Not here for Earth, and not out at Arid, and not anywhere.
Right. Yeah, they're going to have to constantly monitor it and be aware of it. And I think it speaks to like what if they so like let's say we didn't do or we're not let's say we don't do Mars sample return in that timeline. What lessons are they missing out on for bringing this stuff back that they know is going to be really dangerous? Mars sample return, we don't know if it's going to be dangerous now. We're just being careful, responsibly. But if we don't go and get that and set those protocols up and set that infrastructure up and set those standards and guidelines up, what happens if something like this, where we know something dangerous is coming back and now we don't? Now we're not ready. We're doing it, off the fly.
And we have documented proof that it's learned how to eat through at least one type of container.
Right. Yeah.
Do they talk about in the book why, usually the universe is considered to be in balance. What is the purpose then for Astrophage? Why would the universe have something like that? What is it trying to keep in balance?
I don't know. Maybe, we don't know. It might not even be Astrophage might not be natural, for all we know. And I'm going into very high speculation territory here. It might not be natural.
Well, we have at least some evidence of at least one alien race out there. There's nothing suggesting that this was not an experiment gone wrong somewhere else in the solar system.
Yeah, exactly. Lab release by some other alien race.
And it was just so virulent that it was able to shoot itself across the solar, the galaxy. From one star system to another.
Right.
We never really talked too much, and I think you guys in the previous recording about the book posed this question as well. How does it get from one solar system to another?
Right.
But that's obviously something was achieved, whether it was in a lab or elsewhere, that allowed this thing to become interstellar.
Right.
So, or intersolar.
Right.
So,
or if you're worried about, if you play into the dark forest theory, it could have been intentional, where an alien race sent it, saw that, okay, this solar, this cluster area here, we have Arid way over here, and then 40 light years away from Earth, there's people here, there's life there. Let's just wipe all of it out, so we don't have to worry about it, and we don't have to worry about them potentially becoming a threat to us. That's very in line with dark forest, theory thinking. Even though this film is basically the opposite of the dark forest theory, because you have two alien races working together instead of killing each other. But the reason for that is they can talk to each other. There's communication, instantaneous communication. The dark forest stuff really comes into play when you have light years, hundreds of light years between you, and you can't verify or communicate what the other is thinking. So you kind of have to just act.
Yeah.
So it could be that, some alien race decided to make this stuff and just shoot it out in our regional area and just get rid of all the stars here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know it sounds crazy. But
no, it's not crazy.
Yeah, in the three.
Yes, it sounds crazy, but so does a rock alien that can make a physical form of Xeon. So what are we?
By the way, James Ortiz, I think James Ortiz is his name. Was nominated and is eligible for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. If he is nominated, he will be the first puppeteer ever nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
Which is just frankly a crime, in my opinion. Frank Oz should have been nominated so many times over the years, but we'll have that. We'll save that conversation for another day.
Like Andy Serkis, kind of this whole other form of acting that kind of hasn't really gone into due in the awards, landscape at all. So I think it's cool that he was able to he was eligible, number one, and was nominated, or not nominated, was submitted for nomination. So we'll see what happens with that. One other thing I wanted to touch on was, how do you think, where does commercial space travel come into this? Do you guys think? Do they need to be a part of this effort? Because this was kind of mostly just a national
I don't think it's about
effort.
space travel. I think it's about commercial. It doesn't even matter whether it's commercial or governmental. I think that they
Right.
would have been looking for like who's got answers, who's got the scientists. I wouldn't care if they're working for SpaceX or
Yeah.
they're working for NASA or
Just
they're
one
working for
huge
JPL or
RFI,
they're working.
yeah.
It would just be, Strat herself saying, "Okay, we're just sucking everybody." She goes
Right.
and gets him out of an elementary school or a
Yeah.
junior high, right?
Yeah.
So clearly, I don't think that categorization mattered,
Right.
JT. I don't know that we see anybody or even read about anybody coming in from a company necessarily.
No, we don't. It's pretty much all international stuff.
International governmental.
International and governmental, yeah. So I thought that was like an interesting piece because, like today we're going back and forth a lot about what's the role of the private sector versus the public sector, who's governing what, who's regulating what. So I'm curious for both of your perspectives on, what lessons can we learn from this movie as, these policies are forming around planetary protection for private and, public space companies and things like that as we're going back to the moon and thinking about going to Mars.
Well, I think you raised a good point earlier when you were talking about the Mars sample return example. Private sector is taking their guidance, their lead from the government, so right now at least, right? Because that's where the business is. There's no, at least not yet, commercial viability for space businesses beyond satellite-based services that can be offered up to the public. And so therefore, any new technologies that SpaceX or any other sort of commercial industry is developing, they're developing it with the mind towards doing business with the government, at least right now.
Yeah.
So if you are engaging in some effort to, say, for instance, go to the moon or go to Mars, that opens the aperture of what those commercial interests might be developing that could help assist with those missions. That comes in handy if you have a world-ending threat coming down the pike and they're already working on things that might be helpful.
Right.
Because then you could have, your leader of the world say, okay, give me the tech that you're working on. Give me the assets you have. Right now, there's obviously a lot of stuff that some of these companies and SpaceX in particular has been doing that might be helpful. But since we haven't quite gone down this path far enough, I don't know how useful it is right out of the box.
Right.
I think it'd be, lines of R&D that they would have to continue to work on. The only thing I could possibly think of that they could maybe do tomorrow if they were summoned to do so is if you could find a way to have they're called beetles, if you had a way for them to be able to transmit either short or long wave communications on their way back to Earth, some of the video. And if you asked one of these commercial companies, SpaceX, to just have a line of their satellites going as far out to the end of the solar system as they could to act as essentially repeaters to bring that message back to Earth a little bit faster. That's the only thing I could think of they could do tomorrow.
Yeah.
But that's because they already have all those assets.
Right.
And that would degrade over time, obviously.
Right.
But other than that, I think to Asha's point, you're just kind of saying, okay, you're part of the team now. Let's take all your expertise. Here's your mission. Here's the RFP. This is what we need you to build.
Yeah.
As any big government R&D project ultimately does.
Right. Yeah. No, I think those are great points, and I think that's a good idea is to stage the satellites out almost as
daisy chain it.
Daisy chain it. It all comes back to daisy chaining things.
Exactly.
Asha, what do you think?
I agree.
You agree?
Nothing to add.
Okay. So since this has reached like hundreds of millions of viewers and it does have planetary protection and biodefense applications, to it, how do you guys think we should how can the biodefense community and the planetary protection community and NASA leverage this, kind of cultural moment surrounding this film, for public education on these issues? I know that's a tough question.
It's tricky because we don't have an actual rock alien that we can offer up to the public.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Because that really did a lot of the work here. I think. I think that it's difficult because while the film did a great job of distilling the problem for mass consumption, we also have to recognize that it's not normally this easy. right?
Right.
And in fact, as we were talking about, they got lucky on a lot of different levels, and it didn't show as much of the trial and error. It shows a little bit of the trial and error that Grace initially goes through in terms of trying to characterize the astrophage, but there's going to be so much trial and error involved, and things that the public could very well view as a waste of money or time in the quest to try to find a solution for a problem like this, or in the quest to develop technologies that are better preparing us for the next threat, because the threat's not here right now. And even in this world, right, there's obviously some concerns about the sun dimming in that moment in time, but even you can tell at the beginning of the film, the whole public doesn't fully understand what's happening and what the long-term ramifications and implications are. At least the children don't, and maybe that's partially because the parents are trying to protect them, but I think it's also that, they're not feeling the full effects right now. It's 20 years down the road, and that's really tough. And that's why it's impressive that all these global governments get together and invest power in this one person when the threat isn't right on the doorstep today. It's 20 years from now.
Right.
That's a level of preparation that I actually would not expect to see in real life, personally. Yeah. I don't think that we'd be able to set things aside, set our differences aside so easily when the threat is that far off and say, no, we're going to invest now in dealing with it. And I think that's the same thing with the public on a daily basis. We saw it with COVID. We've seen it with other biological threats. It doesn't even take that long. After the immediate danger has passed, people mentally want to move on. And so, I think this is a great example of the benefit of investing in biotechnology and of the utility of government in addressing big problems. But I don't know how we can translate the popularity of this easily to saying, well, this is why we need to invest more in AI. This is why we need to, especially the AI piece.
Well,
when there's a equal and opposite emotional reaction to something like that. This is why we need to be maintaining our investments in the sciences to make sure that we have the bright minds and the tools available to address big problems like these, because the public isn't seeing this in real life.
Right.
Education about the utility of biosciences is very important, but education without a call to action that they believe in is very difficult.
Yeah. I think those are all great points, and I think, it does speak to the, when you have like a longer term threat like that. I've seen it in other science fiction films where that creates, a policy divide. Like this isn't even going to affect my generation. Why do I care? And you see that today with things like climate change or,
let's be
pandemic
honest.
Preparedness in general.
Let's be honest, JT. Yeah. In this world of Project Hail Mary, there's no fewer than 3 doomsday cults that want this to happen.
Right. Yeah. Right.
How big they are is entirely up to your imagination.
Yeah.
But there are going to be people who say, "Oh, this is God's will."
Right.
In some cases, and that's not everyone's going to be on the same page about whether how to deal with it or if we should be dealing with it.
Right. All right. Do you guys want to get to the ratings, or Asha, do you have any other thoughts? Okay.
I do have one question before we go to the ratings. Obviously a big deal was made early on about Grace's theory that not everything is water.
Yeah.
And then it was obviously a big moment there was when he discovers that the astrophage has water, as part of its composition. They never fully get into, though, how it can possibly survive that close to the sun while having water. Any thoughts or science there?
The book does give a little bit more information on that. I don't remember specifically, but basically, so water is very good at like conducting heat and holding heat in. Obviously, it will boil over at some point, but one of the reasons I think that, if I'm remembering correctly, that it's black, like the astrophage is black, like pitch black, is like a radioactive protective layer. Or like cell wall almost around the internal parts of it, protecting the water. And there's obviously that require a lot of energy, and that's why it can be used as a rocket fuel. So that's kind of, I'm sure like the book had a little bit more detail on it, but that's kind of like the broad strokes of how it supposedly is able to survive there. And we've talked about, and I don't know if we might have talked about this on the podcast before, like if you're going into space, water is one of the best radiation shields you could have. So then what you have to solve then after that when you get close to the sun is the heat aspect. And I think it's that black protective layer kind of absorbing it, kind of the same way, you can put the black underneath your eyes before a football game or something like that to redirect some of the sun away from some of the more sensitive parts. it is still 100% science fiction. So they've tried to make a good case and tie things together with as much science as possible. But yeah, it is still science fiction.
Yeah, I kind of had a feeling.
Yeah, but I thought it was really, one of the things I thought was really cool reading the book is that his idea that it didn't have to have water. I still think that's a great idea, and to have, and you might have life that doesn't need it. That's just life as we know it. So I think him having that thought in the first place, and that that success of the imagination, so to speak, is why maybe he was able to work through some of these problems.
Well, I think that we don't make enough of people thinking outside the box, thinking differently. We really, in order for science or anything to progress, you need that. And it's good. You want somebody to say, okay, well, so what does life look like if there's no water?
Right.
I don't know that it needed to go as far as people ridiculing him for his thesis or whatever.
Yeah.
But you need that. You also need lateral thinkers who say, okay, well, this is how it is over here in Gulf. Now, with that in mind, how do I apply that over here in space or here doing something else? You need that as well. We don't teach it particularly well. We kind of admire it. We sort of let it happen. I think the people who have made our major breakthroughs are thinking in different ways, or at least asking different questions.
Right.
What happens if, instead of fusing two things together, can we split them apart? Or if we're splitting them apart, what happens when we fuse them? So that's what I would say about this. To me, it wasn't entirely surprising that they would find him, because they would have done a literature review, or AI would have found this literature.
Yeah.
Then somebody, but it even takes somebody else saying there's value there. He thinks differently.
Right.
I don't think it's valued enough, though.
Yeah.
I really don't. And I think it happens so often that you have people saying, well, it's just not done that way. Or you'll never be successful at that. No one's ever going to go for that.
Right.
I think that part of our success as a commission has been because we have come up with our own ideas, and when other people have said, well, that's never going to happen, we put those ideas out there anyway.
Right.
And then a lot of them do get picked up because other people are looking for the new idea, not the same old idea that isn't getting us anywhere anyhow.
Right.
So I think the movie does a good job of showing the value.
Yeah.
Over a few hours, showing the value of what happens when you can think differently, and showing the value of being able to think differently when it comes to solving a completely seemingly insolvable problem.
Right. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's why it was so cool that he did have this kind of interdisciplinary background as being a teacher and having, that unorthodox thing. I don't think it's realistic that he would have been kicked out of the academic society for that.
Yeah.
I think there are I could probably find papers of people talking about this exact thing.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they are laughed at in the community. I don't know. I don't laugh at them because I think it's worth thinking through these things.
Well, and he was a little, I thought he was a little sensitive about it. Like he flipped out and went all the way, to becoming a teacher for junior high students.
It might have been a him thing.
I mean, even she wasn't ragging on him about it. Like nobody else was. So I don't know.
But this is a good reminder that at the end of the day, science is what we have perceived so far.
Right.
It is the sum total of literature and experimentation that we have conducted that have demonstrated that when you do X, usually Y occurs.
Right.
But I think if we've learned anything, especially in recent years with biological threats that have emerged and with other events that have occurred, that it's not always 100% going to happen the way that it has happened with previous diseases, with previous circumstances, and that we always have to keep an open mind that while science is meant to be repeatable, it is also not fully comprehensive in any way, shape, or form. There is always something new to learn, and even about diseases that we've already learned about.
And we have to pay attention to the mistakes. We have to pay attention to the happenstance. We all know the story of penicillin. That was mold growing on something. It had nothing to do with anything, but it was noticed. And we can't afford to go down too narrow a path. I think that science takes a lot of blame for things and has, particularly since COVID. But at the same time, and I know this is not necessarily a popular view with everybody in the world right now, but we can't afford to toss it out and say, okay, so we're not going to do any more science at all.
Yeah.
And if only because stuff like this is going to happen. And that is not the time then to say, okay, so now would be a good time to, let's regenerate the entire scientific complex now. Right. We shut down NASA. Okay, somebody, open those doors back up and redo. Somehow we have to figure out a way to continue on and make sure that they get, the support they need to continue being and doing the things that they do. Without it, this movie demonstrates we're not going to survive, not just here, but elsewhere too.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So you guys want to get to the recs?
Let's do it.
Okay. Or the ratings. Sorry. So the first category is the relevance to commission recommendations. I think it hit quite a bit.
I think it hits a lot of recommendations. Yeah. And I think that, we have a recommendation to authorize the Office of Planetary Protection to prevent it from going away because it's not authorized. We need that. We need to keep it because stuff happens and we're bringing stuff back and we're going here and going there and coming back. Those cats are all out of the bag now. We're going. Now we can't afford to have somebody not understand the value of that office, and in the name of trying to save money or even move money to go, address something else in the same arena. We can't afford to let that happen. Let somebody say, okay, we're going to shut down this office. Because again, like I just said about science, if something happens, that is not the time to go and then say, well, what happened to those people in the Office of Planetary Protection?
Right.
We can't have that.
Yeah, and then you have to call every former planetary protection officer.
Yeah.
To see if they are willing to come back and help.
Or from a nationalistic perspective, we're going to wind up dependent on everybody else.
Yeah. Right.
That decided to keep their planetary protection.
And we have to hope that they're willing to participate and share that expertise with the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I would give it a 4 or 5, I think.
Yeah, I think it touches on all sorts. Obviously, all the science technology that we talk about in terms of our recommendations, leadership, coordination. I think there's a lot that's there. The only thing really that it doesn't address are the more reactive elements of our recommendations. Surveillance, response, that sort of thing, because that's not happening terrestrially. That's happening out there.
Right. And I think on the surveillance piece, interesting that you bring that up because they got lucky that they were able to see the patrol line.
How convenient. By the way, so much convenience here, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, maybe a 4.
Yeah.
It's not...
I'd say a 4.
Okay. Next category is scientific accuracy. I understand understanding it's science fiction. I still think it did extremely well.
I think it was accurate. I don't think that there was anything in there, that was...
egregious.
Yeah. Oh, look, we found a place where there's no gravity, or,
Do we know that Xeon can be turned into a solid?
I don't know.
I think theoretically it can be.
I wouldn't. It might be able to. I'm not sure. I'm not a chemist. I don't know. But I mean, to your earlier point, there are things that we don't know.
Yeah.
So I think if you can bring something to the table that's plausible, I think that counts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, and that's we've done that with other episodes before as well. That if it's plausible, if it's not completely outlandish, then I'm willing to give a little bit of grace here, pun intended. I meant to ask this before when we were talking about the water in the Astrophage. Is Rocky water based? Is his race water based?
It's an excellent question. I don't know. Okay. I don't think they mentioned that in the movie.
Okay. I would expect a rock not to be, but I would expect it to not to be as well, but I think they did give some, in the book, they did give some description of what his atmosphere was like. That's why they had to change things around. It might have been a high methane atmosphere or something like that. So he might not need water, but might need methane. But I feel like that would have been, if he didn't need water, that would have been a big point to miss in the film. Yeah. Because it kind of proves Grace's point.
Correct.
That there is life that doesn't require water.
Yeah. So I don't know if they require water or not.
Yeah. So I would give this a 3.5. I give it a 3.5 on the accuracy piece.
Wow.
I would give it either a 4 or a 5, I think.
What are you feeling?
I think a 3 would be some accurate and some inaccurate. I think a 5 would be everything is totally accurate.
Yeah.
But we can't know that everything is totally accurate because a lot of this is theoretical.
And we know at least the piece about the astrophage in the water is probably science fiction, as to your point.
Probably,
so
yeah.
a 5 seems like a little
I guess the
tough.
question is how do we rank accuracy when we're talking about fiction? If we only look at the actual facts, those facts were accurate. We did not have inaccurate facts. What we're coming up against is theory and possibilities and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I think that's why I want to give it a higher score, is because the basic science is all accurate.
Mm-hmm.
It's the extension
Right.
of it. And I think that's kind of the cool thing with hard science. Sometimes they base it in real science and then they push the envelope just enough to make it.
I guess I would give it a 4.
Okay.
A 3 sounds too diminutive.
Okay, I'll give it a 4, but I do want to just register that I still have some questions about the light speed travel piece.
Yeah.
That we didn't discuss
Yeah,
because
but
it's
that's
not
a
really
capability
biorelated.
capacity question. You
Well,
don't think it could happen so fast.
There's a capability capacity question. There's also a question, as we've talked before, about if you were truly going at those speeds through space, colliding with even just anything like space dust could be wreak havoc on the craft.
It could potentially. I don't know exactly how fast they were going.
Yeah.
And they didn't talk about that
What protections
as
they
much
have.
in the film.
Yeah.
But one piece similar to or along those lines, that the scientific stuff, the fact that they put them in a coma and not cryo sleep was accurate for the time, because we don't have cryo sleep technology.
Yeah.
So they had to put them into a medically induced coma. It's like you might wake up, you might not. That's why the 2 people died.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I thought it was cool that they tried to do it.
And by the way, I don't
with-
think that they should have died. I don't know that there was anything that happened that would have prevented them from coming out of that coma. And I don't think
a coma.
that it would. I know, but why? But we medically
And you
induce
have an
people
AI
all
doctor.
the time, and I don't think we're losing 2/3 of the people that are in medically induced comas.
I think because you put them you put people in a medically induced coma for how long though in a clinical setting here on Earth?
Well, how long was he in the coma there?
Years.
Well, I mean, it depends,
it
on
depends
how
on
fast
how relative.
how fast they were traveling.
Yeah.
I think that part I didn't think was quite realistic.
That they died.
Yeah. I mean, he needed, but see, some of this is just for the story. It doesn't work if
he's got friends on the
Yeah, he's got friends, right? Yeah. The story.
If the AT&T girl made it.
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing with Rocky and Rocky's people.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting point. Like, if Rocky's entire crew hadn't died and Grace's entire crew hadn't died, would they have been more hostile toward each other, or more skeptical or cautious, and not as friendly with each other because they needed each other?
Mm-hmm.
And there's that loneliness aspect.
I don't know. I think they still would have needed them. They could not solve this independently, and I don't think they would have been competing with each other.
No, I think there might have been more suspicion.
I mean, we would have had to
but-
learn more about the general psychology and sociology of Rocky's people.
Yeah.
I think, to really reach a definitive conclusion. We understand how humans work based off of Darwinism and why we are so mistrustful of others.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know for certain that Rocky's people
are like that,
emerged from that similar sort of environment.
Right.
So we'd have to learn more about that, I think, to really reach a conclusion. But certainly on the part of the humans, I think there would have been some suspicion if it had been a group versus one person.
Yeah.
So what are you giving it, a 5 for
I wanted to give it a
Let's give it a 5.
I wanted to give it a 5.
Okay, so then let's settle on a 4.
I'll give it a 4.
Because if Rob's basically giving it a 3 and I'm giving it a 4 and you're giving it a 5,
Well,
that's the average.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think a 4. A 4 acknowledges that there's a lot that they get right here,
Yes.
while also acknowledging that there's a bit that they're stretching.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then the next category is scenario development, or success of the imagination or creativity.
5.
I think that's
5.
Yeah, it's
Easy
gotta be a 5.
peasy.
Entertainment value.
5.
5.
Yeah.
Government policy. So I think we can ding it here a little bit.
Well, I
if,
think
because they didn't like to your point earlier, we didn't really get as much information as we did in the film about the government policy. It was just kind of like everyone's working together and everything's swell. Go.
Yeah, it is fascinating. It feels like some of the more recent things we've been reviewing, there's been almost an absence of clear-cut policy
Yeah.
that we've been able to judge. Right, between the 28 years later films and this, it's we have to kind of use our own imaginations to kind of figure out, okay, how do we get here, and who should we be dinging people? I guess the only thing I'll say is, based on what we're seeing, everyone's cooperating. They appear to be leveraging all their resources to try to achieve this. The only thing and because I can't see that they're not doing everything else they can off screen to try to find a solution here on Earth. A countermeasure on Earth to deal with the astrophage while the Hail Mary's out into space, I have no reason to ding them necessarily based on the policy.
I think it was good government policy to say that everybody has to work together.
Actually,
and
that they're all agreeing to
authorize
do it.
people to do extreme stuff.
And they're moving quick. And
they forced it.
Yeah.
Resources assigned.
So one piece. What about Grace's consent getting on that ship? He didn't consent to going.
Sure.
Is that good government policy?
Yes.
Okay. No, I think in these circumstances I agree, because
I think
because in the book
it was life ththreatening.
She described it as like there's of course concern that once he gets her he won't do it because he'll be pissed. But Strauss knew, or Strat knew, that he would do it when he got there because of his personality.
I mean, I guess you have to make sure you understand the psychological disposition of the individual you're sending up there, and making sure that they can be well adjusted enough to deal with it. And there's also an urgency piece. She said it herself. It would take a while to bring somebody else up to speed, and that's probably delaying the mission by a year, 2 years, depending on the circumstances.
With all the correct, or not correct, but all the
qualifications,
personality characteristics, and the qualifications, and his psychological capability. Somebody else might have gone out there and just completely flipped out.
Actually, this is one place where I will ding them just a little bit. They should have had no fewer than a dozen or 2 dozen people who were trained up and ready to do this if they needed to. The fact that there were only 3 individuals that were up to speed enough to go on that rocket at that time, I think was a little bit of an oversight on their part.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And this is something they don't explain in the film, but they do explain it in the book. One of the reasons they have to send Grace and they don't have as many backups is because there's only a certain percentage of the population that has a gene that makes them more able to survive the medically induced coma.
Oh, that's right.
Yes. So that's one of the reasons.
But then they blew it with the other 2 people who couldn't survive the medically induced coma?
Yeah. Well, more likely to survive, right?
I think more likely
to survive, not guaranteed to survive.
Yeah.
But even so, even if it's like a subset of people, they had to have been able to find other folks that they could have trained up just in case there was a catastrophic issue with the primary team.
Right.
Or even the backup.
Maybe they were there, but he was the next best person to go.
Well, then there's a question there, Asha, of if there were other people that they could have gotten prepared, and even if they weren't the best option, now you're having to trade off. Do we know for certain that Grace executes the mission knowing that we essentially kidnapped him and sentenced him to death without his consent? Or is it worth that risk because the next person down is so much less capable than Grace that we have to risk it?
Saying that they, imbued this woman with all this power and trusted her judgment enough to say, this is what she's decided, we're backing her up.
And maybe that's another reason to ding the government policy. As I said at the outset, the idea of vesting all supreme power into one person with no ability to say, maybe we should think about this for a second. So maybe that's another piece of this, as we talked about earlier.
What do we think then? 4 or 5?
4 or 5.
4?
Because I do want to give them a lot of credit for pointing out that the cooperation and the international cooperation piece is essential.
And we're going to put aside all the other garbage for now.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a monumental achievement that I would give it at least a 4.
Yeah. So what do you think, Asha? 4?
I think also at least a 4, but I was going to go with 4 or 5.
I think we can go with 4 or 5.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you think 4 or 5?
I think
because at least there was a policy, as you were saying. Some of these movies were like, we're kind of backing into it. Like, I guess there kind of is one. There's a society, kind of, so then there must be a government. So there is one. And then we see evidence of it. In the book, we see more evidence of it, or hear more, or read more evidence of it. But it's there. It's for the good and not for the bad. It's all about survival. Priorities are pretty clearly set. The other things we don't see, Congress here would have had to have approved emergency appropriations to an enormous, height.
By the way, on that point, and I know this was brought up when you guys reviewed the book, they could have started getting some money out the door using the CCC, the Commodity Credit Corporation, because the Astrophage is a threat to agriculture.
Sure.
So the Secretary of USDA could have said, "Here's $30 billion to get you started," if they truly wanted to, without any congressional.
I agree. I imagine there are probably other weird, pockets of money. You were talking about the military piece. A lot could have just been, it's a threat to the nation. Mm-hmm. You can move a lot. So I don't know. That's why I think we can rate it highly on the policy side.
Yeah, I do 4 or 5.
Okay.
Relative to the other movies we've seen too.
Yeah. Okay. What about portrayal by the actors?
Well, when we watched it, or not watch it, when we were reviewing the first time, we did talk about this, I think, that we were wondering, whoever has to act had better not be somebody who can't credibly be a scientist.
Right.
And can't credibly be a teacher, and can't credibly do all of these things.
Or portray Rocky.
Well, did we talk about Rocky?
I think we did.
You talked a little bit about Rocky.
Yeah. So I think we wondered about Gosling.
Yeah.
And sort of said we didn't judge him in advance. We just said he's going to have to.
Yeah.
In order for it to be good. Because if he doesn't, or whoever doesn't, then it's going to be terrible.
Yeah. And
it's going to be boring. Or unrealistic. So I thought he did a great job. I thought the people who were playing the astronauts or the other people around him did a good job. I think Carl, the guard, did a good job. Because he was supposed to do more than just guard him or be around him.
Right.
He needed to be supportive of him. I thought the woman who played Strat did a good job, although we do have these questions about what she was directed to do.
Right.
We're assuming she was directed to tone it down.
Yeah.
If she was not directed to do that and she did it on her own and they said, okay, then maybe we would have an issue with her. Yeah. It depends on what she was told to do. Then you have to look at Rocky. And are we saying that are we grading the puppeteer's ability to puppeteer, as a portrayal?
Yeah.
Well, I split those two things up for him. He did both at the same time. But I don't think there was anybody in this that I felt like the actors are just not.
Yeah.
It's just not doing it for me.
I agree. There's no weak link. As far as I could tell in the acting.
That's what I thought as well.
I thought it was all very well done.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. So
a 5?
Yeah.
All right. 5. And for the last category is direction, production, and writing, which I think 5. If I had to.
No, I'm taking a little bit off.
Okay.
Because of Strat.
Okay.
I think that she was. I personally think she was directed to tone her down, and I think, in terms of the writing, we know that changed from what Andy wrote to what came across on the page. Right. Because she's saying what Drew wrote in the screenplay.
Right.
So that part, I don't like that. I think it could have been a great, even better movie if they had gone all the way and leaned all the way into her personality.
You liked her portrayal more in the book?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
I thought it was more interesting.
Yeah. And I remember us talking about it when she got casted, being super excited about it, because we were like, she can totally do that role. Mm-hmm. She's played those types of roles before. Mm-hmm. Where she has been that more authoritative, stern figure. Mm-hmm. So I was a little. I think you make a good point there. That I don't think that it was her choice, because she's capable of doing that.
Yeah.
And if she read the book,
they made a choice.
Yeah.
Somebody made a choice. I don't know why they did. They might not have wanted. I mean this in a lowercase c way. May not have wanted somebody to compete with Ryan Gosling's character, with Grace.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because they're all kind of there's him being awesome, and then everybody else is just a bit lower, right? In terms of what they're doing. So I would say a 4 or 5, because we don't do 0.25.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I think that's good. Yeah, I agree. Okay. So that gives us a final rating of 4.57.
Okay.
which is definitely up there.
Which is
Yeah.
definitely up there. I don't remember the last time we had something that high.
Well, and I think it was helped by the fact that we could actually speak well of the government policy this time around.
Exactly,
Usually it's the
yeah.
government policy that weighs it down.
Right.
Well, I think that we should consider for a future episode. I do think we should address The Martian.
Yeah, I think so.
I do because we have a writer and a screenplay writer, or a novelist and a screenplay writer, that are the same, and we have an interesting situation. There's some similarities, some not. So I think we should do that in the future.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it would be a cool comparison.
Good excuse for me to finally see the movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie. Great movie.
Maybe you also read the book, Rob.
Yeah, printed word nowadays. Such a struggle. I like how you actually mentioned during the episode you did about the novel for Project Hail Mary that you listened to the audiobook instead of read it.
Yeah. And then I went back and I bought the hardcover, and then I was like, oh, they actually show notes, but in the audio version they play the notes instead of showing the notes on the page, which I thought was really, really cool.
Interesting.
And just a shout out to Ray Porter from the audiobook. I think did an amazing job.
He did a great job.
Awesome. So with that, thank you all so much for joining us on this episode of the Biollywood podcast, and we hope that you will join us next time. And remember, Hail Mary,
full of grace.
All right.
Thanks everybody.